We need to discuss your inappropriate comment about the regional director during yesterday's conference call, said Iris, our human resources manager. Her voice had that practiced neutrality that actually conveyed deep disapproval. I stared at her, genuinely confused. What comment? I barely spoke during that call. She slid a printed transcript across the table. Someone had highlighted words in neon yellow. Crude, sexually explicit language about Director Preston's physical appearance that made my skin crawl just reading it. This wasn't me, I said, my voice rising despite my attempt to stay calm. I would never say something like this. 3 people independently reported hearing you say these exact words during the 3-minute technical difficulty when the video dropped but audio continued, Iris replied, tapping a perfectly manicured nail against the paper. That's fairly conclusive, Piper. My heart hammered against my ribs. Check the recording again. The recording had that audio segment corrupted, unfortunately, Iris interrupted. But we have 3 senior staff members with identical accounts. I recognized what was happening with crystal clarity. 3 senior staff members, all loyal to my supervisor. The same supervisor who'd been systematically undermining me since I'd challenged her on the regulatory compliance issues with our Asia expansion. The door swung open without a knock. Evan Reiner, CEO and founder, stepped in. His unexpected presence sent Iris jolting upright in her chair, smoothing her already immaculate blazer. Sir, we're in the middle of a disciplinary. Actually, he said, his voice quiet but filling the room completely. We need to talk about something else entirely. Iris's face drained of color so rapidly I thought she might faint. Her hand trembled as she withdrew the transcript from my side of the table. Miss Chaudhry has been working directly with my office for the past month, he continued, taking the chair beside me rather than behind the desk where executives typically sat. On my explicit instructions, I kept my expression neutral, though inside my mind raced. I had done no such thing. I'm not sure I understand, Iris said, her voice barely audible. You will, he replied, then turned to me. Piper, would you mind waiting outside for a moment? As I stood to leave, he added, and please call Lane in legal. Tell him it's time for what we discussed. I stepped into the hallway, the door clicking shut behind me. Through the frosted glass, I could see their silhouettes. Evan leaning forward, Iris shrinking back in her chair. Whatever was happening, it certainly wasn't what I'd expected when I'd received the ominous HR summons this morning. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. I had no idea who Lane was, or what call I was supposed to make. But something extraordinary was unfolding. And somehow, impossibly, the CEO was intervening on my behalf. Wait, were you as surprised as I was by that unexpected entrance? If you're enjoying this story of workplace revenge, take a second to hit like and subscribe. The truth behind what happens next will completely change how you view office politics forever. My name is Piper Chaudhry, and until 3 months ago, I was a mid-level project manager who kept her head down and did her work. Not particularly ambitious, not particularly noteworthy. Just competent, reliable. The kind of employee who gets solid performance reviews but is never quite remarkable enough to fast-track for promotion. That changed when I was unexpectedly tapped to lead our company's expansion into Asian markets. The announcement shocked everyone, especially Thora, my immediate supervisor, who had been lobbying aggressively for her friend Willa to get the position instead. Piper's innovative approach to the European regulatory challenges impressed the board. Our division head had explained during the announcement. We believe she'll bring that same creative problem, solving to the complexities of the Asian markets. I still remember Thora's expression, a tight smile that suggested she was experiencing a minor dental procedure rather than congratulating her subordinate. Innovative wasn't the word she used later when she cornered me in the break room. Listen carefully, she said, stirring her tea with unnecessary vigor. You've been with us, what, 6 years? I've invested 15 years in this company. This project is too important for experiments with unproven talent. I understand your concerns, I said, trying to sound confident despite the knot forming in my stomach. But I've already started research on the regulatory landscape. And I think, research, she echoed with a dismissive laugh. Darling, business in Asia isn't about researching regulations. It's about relationships. Relationships that Willa and I have cultivated for years while you were managing supply chains in Detroit. That conversation set the tone for what followed. Every meeting became a minefield, every email a potential trap. Thora's tight circle of allies, including Willa, Devon, and Kenzie, closed ranks, excluding me from crucial conversations and withholding information I needed to do my job. Despite this, I threw myself into learning everything about the markets we were targeting. I spent nights researching regulatory requirements, consumer preferences, and competitive landscapes. And what I discovered alarmed me deeply. Our product line, a revolutionary type of flame-retardant building material, would fail crucial safety regulations in 3 major Asian countries. The modifications required would delay our launch by 8 months minimum and require significant redesign. When I brought these findings to Thora with carefully prepared documentation, she dismissed them immediately. "Those regulations are flexible," she said, barely glancing at my research. "Continue as planned." Something in her casual dismissal triggered warning bells. This wasn't about office politics anymore. It was about potentially dangerous products entering markets where they wouldn't meet safety standards. I tried a different approach, scheduling a private meeting with Devon, Thora's second-in-command, hoping he might see reason. "Look," he said, lowering his voice in the conference room. "Everyone knows those requirements are just starting points for negotiation. We have local partners who handle these things. But the lab tests clearly show our materials would fail inspection." I insisted. Devon's expression hardened. "Piper, some friendly advice? Know when to follow directions. Thora has connections you couldn't imagine. Don't make yourself a problem she needs to solve." That night, I found a note tucked under my windshield wiper in the parking garage. Plain white paper, plain black type. "Some careers end before they begin. Know when to keep quiet." I sat in my car for nearly an hour, the paper trembling in my hands, wondering what I'd stumbled into and who I could possibly trust. The threatening note was my breaking point. That night, I called my younger sister Zoe, the only person I trusted completely with this situation. "You need to document everything," she said immediately. "Record conversations if it's legal in your state. Save emails. Take photos of anything suspicious." "And then what?" I asked, pacing my small apartment kitchen. "Go to HR? They're all buddies with Thora." "Maybe not HR," Zoe said thoughtfully. "Maybe aim higher." Following her advice, I began keeping meticulous notes. I recorded meetings when possible. I saved emails showing how information was being deliberately withheld. I compiled the regulatory research that was being ignored. And I watched. I observed how Thora operated, the way she cultivated relationships with certain executives while subtly undermining others, the way information flowed in her circle, always controlled, always serving her narrative. 2 weeks after finding the note, came the conference call that would change everything. Our regional director, Preston, had flown in from Singapore specifically to discuss timeline concerns with the expansion. 20 of us gathered in the main conference room, with another dozen joining virtually. Thora controlled the presentation with her usual polished confidence, clicking through slides that painted a picture of perfect progress. "And now," she said, "Piper will update us on the regulatory approval process." My stomach tightened as she smiled at me, gesturing toward the screen. This was the first I'd heard about presenting anything. She had deliberately blindsided me. I stood, keenly aware of every eye in the room. "Thank you, Thora. While I haven't prepared formal slides, I can share that my research into regulatory requirements in our target markets has identified significant challenges we need to address before proceeding." Preston leaned forward, his brow furrowing. "What kind of challenges?" Before I could answer, the video feed cut out. The large screen went black, though the audio connection remained active. "Technical difficulties," Thora announced smoothly. "While it addresses this, let me respond to Preston's question. The regulatory landscape is indeed complex, but we've accounted for all requirements in our timeline. All compliance benchmarks are being met ahead of schedule." This was an outright lie. I opened my mouth to object when Preston's voice came through the speakers, specifically regarding the flame spread rating requirements in Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan. Are we meeting those standards with our current formulation? A heavy silence fell over the room. Even Thora hesitated. "I can answer that," I said clearly. "Our current product formulation does not meet those standards. The test results I've received indicate we would need significant modifications to—" "I'm sorry," Thora interrupted, her voice sharp despite her smile. "Piper is mistaken. The results she's referring to were preliminary and have since been superseded by more comprehensive testing. Everything is proceeding as planned." The video feed suddenly returned. Preston's face appeared on screen, looking unconvinced. "I'd like to see both sets of test results," he said. "Of course," Thora replied smoothly. "We'll send everything over today." When the call ended, Thora cornered me by the water cooler, her voice low but intense. What exactly do you think you're doing? My job, I replied, matching her quiet tone. Those test results haven't been superseded, and you know it. Something flickered in her eyes. Not anger, but calculation. Piper, you're new to this level of business. Sometimes optimistic projections are necessary to maintain momentum. The details get sorted along the way. These aren't details. They're safety regulations that exist for a reason. She placed a hand on my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. You need to decide whether you want to be part of this team's success. Not everyone is cut out for leadership. That night, my partner Andy found me surrounded by printouts at our dining table, frantically searching for anything I might have missed. You look terrible, she said, setting down her bag. When did you last eat? I shrugged, pushing hair from my face. I think they're going to fire me. Andy pulled up a chair. Then let them. Find somewhere that values your integrity. It's not that simple, I said, showing her the email I'd just received, a calendar invitation for a meeting with HR the following week. Subject line, performance concerns. Actually, it is that simple, Andy insisted. Resign before they can fire you. Your mental health is worth more than this job. Twice over the next few days, I drafted resignation letters. Twice I deleted them. Something kept me from walking away, a stubborn belief that truth should matter, that companies shouldn't risk public safety for profit margins. Instead of resigning, I did something riskier. I began searching for what Thora and her team might be hiding. Under the guise of preparing market analysis, I requested access to product development files normally outside my purview. Most requests were denied, but enough were granted that I began piecing together a disturbing picture. 3 days before my HR meeting, I found it, hidden in a subfolder of budget projections, a spreadsheet that made my blood run cold. It wasn't just about ignoring regulations. They had actively designed a cheaper, non-compliant version of our product specifically for Asian markets. The spreadsheet included calculations of how many consumer complaints, injuries, and even potential deaths the company could absorb before regulatory action would trigger financial consequences exceeding the profit from cutting corners. Human lives reduced to cost-benefit analysis. I printed the file, then immediately deleted it from my downloads folder. That night, I didn't sleep. By morning, I had made my decision. The HR meeting arrived. As Iris slid the transcript of my supposed inappropriate comments across the table, I recognized the trap for what it was, Thora's insurance policy. If I became a problem, I'd be terminated for harassment, my credibility destroyed before I could expose anything. Then the CEO walked in, changing everything with his unexpected intervention. Now, standing in the hallway outside the HR office, I still had no idea what to do about his instruction to call someone named Lane. I scrolled through my contacts frantically, finding no one by that name. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Miss Chaudhary? This is Lane Perkins from Legal. The CEO asked me to contact you. Please meet me in conference room E immediately. When I arrived at the small conference room tucked away on the executive floor, a tall woman with close-cropped silver hair stood examining a stack of documents. Lane Perkins, she said, extending her hand. I understand you've uncovered something significant about our Asian market expansion. I'm sorry, but I'm confused, I admitted. I haven't spoken to the CEO about any of this. Lane smiled slightly. No, but someone else has. Someone who's been watching the situation unfold with great concern. The door opened, and in walked Melissa from accounting, a quiet woman I'd exchanged maybe 10 words with in 6 years. Sorry I'm late, she said, setting down a thick folder. I had to wait until Thora left for lunch to access the remaining files. I stared at her in bewilderment. You're involved in this? Melissa has been our internal auditor for compliance issues for 8 years, Lane explained. She reports directly to the board of directors, not to management. And I've been monitoring Thora's team since irregularities appeared in the safety testing budget 3 months ago, Melissa added. When you were appointed to lead the expansion, I hoped you'd notice what was happening. But why not stop them sooner? I asked. Lane's expression hardened. Evidence. We needed irrefutable proof of intentional wrongdoing, not just negligence. When you found that risk assessment spreadsheet, it was the final piece we needed. My mind reeled. How did you know I found it? We've been monitoring all access to those files, Melissa said simply. When you opened that document at 11:42 p.m. and spent 18 minutes on it before printing, we knew you'd found it. Lane handed me a document. This is a whistleblower protection agreement. By signing, you'll receive immunity from any potential liability, plus a guarantee of continued employment with the company, regardless of the outcome of our investigation. As I scanned the document, a terrible thought struck me. Thora has allies throughout the company. Even with this protection, my work life will become impossible. Perhaps, Lane acknowledged. Or perhaps not. The board has authorized a complete restructuring of the product development division, pending the results of our investigation. I signed the agreement, my signature shaky but determined. What happens now? I asked. Lane checked her watch. Right now, Thora is being informed that her team's presentation to the board this afternoon has been moved up by 30 minutes. She won't have time to properly prepare, and I assume I'll be called in to contradict her claims? Melissa and Lane exchanged glances. Actually, Lane said, we had something different in mind, something that will leave no room for denial or escape. As she outlined their plan, a mixture of dread and vindication washed over me. The trap had been meticulously designed, but not for me as I'd feared. For Thora, the question was, would it work, or would her network of influence once again shield her from consequences? 3 hours later, I stood in the back of the boardroom, watching Thora confidently stride to the podium, unaware that everything was about to change. Thora glided to the front of the boardroom with the easy confidence of someone who'd navigated corporate politics for 15 years. Her cream suit was impeccable, her presentation materials arranged with military precision on the gleaming table. Thank you all for accommodating the schedule change, she said, smiling at the 12 board members seated around the massive table. I know everyone's time is valuable. From my position against the back wall, I watched as she connected her laptop to the projector with practiced ease. I felt almost sorry for her. Almost. Before we begin, interrupted Graham, the board chairman, I'd like to note some additional attendees joining us today. Thora's smile flickered briefly as she noticed the 3 unfamiliar faces at the far end of the table. Allow me to introduce Mr. Tanaka from the Japanese Regulatory Commission, Ms. Chen from Taiwan's Building Materials Safety Board, and Mr. Park from South Korea's Consumer Protection Agency, Graham continued. They've taken time from their busy schedules to discuss our Asian market entry strategy. The color drained from Thora's face so gradually that only someone watching for it would notice. But she recovered quickly, nodding respectfully toward the regulators. What a wonderful surprise, she said, her voice steady despite the slight tremor in her hands. Their insights will be invaluable as we discuss our fully compliant product line. Mr. Tanaka smiled politely. We look forward to hearing about your safety protocols. Thora launched into her presentation, clicking through slides that showcased optimistic projections and glossy marketing concepts. I had to admire her composure. Even knowing what we knew, she projected absolute certainty. As you can see, she said, gesturing to a graph of ascending revenue lines, our projections indicate a 30% market penetration within 18 months, with minimal adaptation costs. Excuse me, miss. Chen interrupted, adjusting her glasses. These projections assume immediate regulatory approval in all target markets. What's your timeline for completing the required safety certifications? A bead of sweat formed at Thora's temple. We anticipate expedited approvals based on our existing certifications in North American markets. Interesting, Mr. Park commented, considering the significant differences between North American and Asian flame retardant standards. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Thora's gaze flicked to Devon and Willa, seated in the front row, then back to her slides. Perhaps I should skip ahead to our compliance strategy, she said, clicking forward several slides. As you can see, we've developed a comprehensive approach to meeting all regulatory requirements. Lane Perkins rose from her seat at the side of the room. Before you continue, I believe we should address some discrepancies in the materials presented today. Evan, the CEO, nodded. Please proceed, Lane. She walked to the front, tablet in hand. With your permission, I'd like to display some additional documents relevant to this discussion. When Thora hesitated, Evan spoke again. Please connect Miss Perkins' device, Thora. The atmosphere in the room shifted as Lane's screen replaced Thora's presentation. The first document displayed was the risk assessment spreadsheet I'd discovered, the one calculating acceptable consumer incidence against profit margins. This document, Lane explained calmly, details a deliberate strategy to circumvent safety regulations in Asian markets by using non-compliant materials while calculating the financial impact of potential injuries and fatalities. Mr. Tanaka leaned forward, his expression darkening as he studied the figures. There must be some mistake, Thora said quickly. I've never seen this document before. Lane swiped to the next screen. An email chain with Thora's name clearly visible in the sender field, discussing how to manage test results that didn't meet requirements. This can't be authentic, Thora insisted, her voice rising slightly. Someone has clearly manipulated these emails. The metadata and server logs confirm their authenticity, Lane replied, as do the sworn statements from 3 members of your team who have come forward in exchange for immunity. At this, Thora's head snapped toward Devon and Willa. Devon stared at the table, refusing to meet her eyes. Willa looked back defiantly, and I suddenly understood who had blown the whistle first. Additionally, Lane continued, displaying a new document, we have confirmation that the inappropriate comments attributed to Piper Chaudhry were fabricated as part of an effort to discredit her after she raised safety concerns. All eyes turned to me briefly. I kept my expression neutral, though my heart pounded so loudly I was certain everyone could hear it. For the next 40 minutes, Lane methodically presented evidence of systematic fraud, willful negligence, and attempted cover-up. Emails, meeting recordings, budget manipulations, all pointing to Thora and her inner circle. Throughout it all, Thora attempted various defenses: denial, claims of misunderstanding, suggestions that she was being set up by competitors. With each new piece of evidence, her protests grew weaker. When Lane finished, Graham broke the heavy silence. Mr. Tanaka, Miss Chen, Mr. Park, on behalf of the board, I extend our deepest apologies for what you've witnessed today. I assure you this behavior represents neither our values nor our standard practices. Miss Chen spoke carefully. Had these products entered our markets as planned, the consequences could have been tragic. Buildings filled with families, schools with children, all with materials designed to appear safe, while actually increasing fire danger. We will require complete transparency moving forward, Mr. Park added, and significant assurances before any products are approved. Graham nodded. You'll have it. We'll be implementing a complete restructuring of our product development and compliance departments effective immediately. Thora made one last attempt. This is clearly a misunderstanding that we can clarify with additional context. If I could just explain our actual intentions. That won't be necessary, Evan interrupted. Security will escort you, Devon, and Kenzie to collect your personal belongings. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. The silence that followed felt like a physical weight. Then came the most unexpected moment of all. Willa stood up. I'd like to make a statement. I participated in these actions under pressure and threat of career sabotage. While that doesn't excuse my behavior, I want to acknowledge that Piper Chaudhry tried repeatedly to address these safety issues through proper channels and was systematically blocked and undermined. All eyes turned to me again. Graham cleared his throat. Miss Chaudhry, would you come forward, please? Walking to the front of that room, past Thora's burning glare, was the longest 30 feet of my life. My legs felt like they might give way with each step. In light of what we've learned, Graham said, the board would like to offer you the position of Vice President of International Compliance and Product Safety, a new role reporting directly to the board. Your integrity in this situation has been noted and valued. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur. Security arrived to escort Thora, Devon, and Kenzie out. The regulatory officials had private conversations with board members. People shook my hand and patted my shoulder. 2 hours later, I found myself alone in the conference room, still trying to process everything that had happened. The door opened, and Lane stepped in. Quite a day, she said, sitting across from me. Did you know the board would offer me that position? I asked. She shook her head. That was their decision. A good one, I think. What happens now? To Thora and the others? Beyond termination? Lane considered. The board has authorized me to cooperate with regulatory authorities in all 3 countries if they pursue civil penalties. And given the evidence of fraud and the potential harm to consumers, criminal charges are possible. I exhaled slowly. It's hard to believe it's over. Almost over, Lane corrected. There's still the matter of rebuilding the department and establishing proper compliance protocols. That's where you come in. 3 weeks later, I was settling into my new office when my assistant announced an unexpected visitor, Thora. 5 minutes, I told him. No longer. She entered looking nothing like the polished executive I'd known. Her hair was pulled back carelessly, her clothes rumpled as if she'd been sleeping in them. They're investigating me for criminal negligence, she said without preamble. My reputation is destroyed. 15 years of work, gone. I said nothing, waiting. You could speak for me, she continued, a note of desperation entering her voice. Tell them I was just aggressive about deadlines, not deliberately ignoring safety. That would be a lie, I replied calmly. The spreadsheet calculating acceptable casualties made your intentions clear. That was Devon's work, not mine. Under your direction, with your approval. She slumped into the chair across from my desk. What do you want? Money? A public apology? I don't want anything from you, Thora. The truth came out. That's enough. You've ruined me, she whispered. I leaned forward. No. You ruined yourself the moment you decided profit margins were worth more than human lives. After she left, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the note that had been left on my windshield months ago. Know when to keep quiet. I took a photo of it next to my new office nameplate and texted it to Zoe with the caption, "Sometimes knowing when to speak up matters more." 6 months later, our new, fully compliant building materials began entering Asian markets with the highest safety ratings in the industry. The additional research and development had cost millions, but as Evan noted during the launch celebration, integrity isn't expensive, it's priceless. The regulatory officials who had witnessed Thora's downfall became our strongest advocates, helping navigate approval processes that our competitors found challenging. In my new role, I established anonymous reporting channels for safety concerns and implemented protection protocols for whistleblowers. Every quarter, I personally reviewed compliance reports with an independent auditor. On the anniversary of that fateful board meeting, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. It contained just one line. "You were right. I was wrong. I'm sorry." No signature was needed. I knew who it was from. That evening, Andy and I celebrated with a quiet dinner at home. As we raised glasses to mark the occasion, she asked, "Was it worth it? All the stress and uncertainty?" I thought about the products now keeping families safe, the company culture that had transformed, and the young employees who now felt empowered to raise concerns without fear. "Every moment," I replied. "Some fights are worth having, even when you're not sure you'll win." I later learned that Thora had eventually found work at a small consulting firm. Her influence and reputation permanently diminished. Devon had left the industry entirely. Willa, who had cooperated with investigators, was working in quality assurance at a competitor, her experience a cautionary tale she shared openly. As for me, I discovered that doing the right thing isn't always easy, but living with yourself afterward is much simpler when you've followed your conscience. If you've ever stood up against wrongdoing or wondered if you should, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Sometimes knowing you're not alone in facing difficult ethical choices makes all the difference. Like this video if it resonated with you, and subscribe for more stories about courage in unexpected places. Remember, in the battle between profit and principle, your voice matters more than you know.